Hey everyone, Sam here, also known as Mr. Stainless, and we are back talking about State of Decay 2, and more importantly, whether the characters from the first game will be making an appearance. But before we get into that, I'm actually running a giveaway at the moment for a copy of the Year 1 Survival Edition of State of Decay 1 on Xbox. So if you want to be in with a chance of winning that, there is a link to it down in the video description where you can find out more. Now, if you didn't play the first State of Decay game, in the core storyline you played from the perspective of Marcus and his friend Ed as they joined a group of survivors led by Lily and tried to get themselves to safety. Or at least you would have, as long as none of them died in your playthrough. Now at the end of that game, spoiler alert here, they managed to get themselves out of the region they were trapped in and were on the road to finding somewhere safe to weather the apocalypse. Now, as of yet, we haven't been told much, if anything at all, about the characters we will play as in State of Decay 2. So far, in any of the gameplay we've seen, we've spotted recurring faces and characters, but the developers haven't pointed out that there are any characters of interest, which I find quite interesting. There's been a lot of chatter on the State of Decay 2 subreddit around this topic, about how the game won't necessarily have a story with fixed characters, but instead, the story will unfold around whatever generated characters you get when you boot up a game. Now, I don't know how accurate that is, or if that is something some members of the community are saying based on what they've heard from the devs, but I don't know what I think about that. On one hand, it's cool that the characters your game will focus on will change every time. It adds a feeling of newness to it all, but on the other hand, I just miss those feelings of home you got from the first game because we knew those characters. Every time we booted up a new game of State of Decay, we were greeted with the familiar witty quips of Ed, or the incredibly familiar and recognisable sound of Alan shouting at someone and being an absolute and utter asshole. He was a dick, but by golly, he was our dick. And I think that's something in State of Decay 2 that if we don't have some form of consistent characters that we play as, we'll lose out on. For me, one of the reasons I always loved getting back to my home base was because it felt like home. You met some familiar faces, faces that on some playthroughs you managed to keep them alive, on others, not so much. And when you look at Ed's face, for example, as he lays there sick and dying, and it's your 5th playthrough and you've read the wiki, so you just lean in and whisper gently into his ear, "This time, Ed, this time, I'm gonna save you." Now, with regards to these characters from the first game returning for the second, the developers said in their first IGN stream that the events of the first game are historical. There will be Easter eggs calling back to events of the first game, and through that there will be some threads that tie the games together, but they didn't flat out say that we'll meet characters from the first game. With all of that said, does the idea that we won't have a solid base of characters that the story will evolve around every playthrough get me down a little? Sure. If it's true, does that mean the game will suck? Of course not. For me, and I think for a lot of fans of the first game, State of Decay 2 is something we've been waiting for a long time. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure we all love and remember fondly the characters of State of Decay 1, but we're ready to jump in and create new stories, new adventures. Perhaps this time, the emotional stakes will be higher as we realise that the characters we meet, that we get to play as in this game, may never be seen again if we don't look after them. But what do you think? Will you miss the characters from State of Decay 1, and what are your thoughts on the idea that we won't have a recurring team of characters to progress the story with? Let me know down in the comments below. Equally, if you are a fan of State of Decay 2 and want to be kept up to date with all of your news, do be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. But in the meantime, have a great week, and I will of course speak to you all soon.